The mansion had never been this silent. No feet pounding down hallways. No arguments over toys. No laughter echoing through 20 rooms. Just nothing. Ethan Caldwell pushed through the front door. His tie loosened. His jaw clenched. The air felt wrong. Too still, too empty. Where were they? No twins rushing to greet him, no chaos, no sound. He dropped his keys and called out, "Liam, Lucas." Nothing. Room by room, he moved faster. The kitchen untouched. The playroom abandoned. His heart hammered against his ribs. Where were his sons? He reached their bedroom door and swung it open, and froze. There they were, kneeling. Two small blonde heads bowed. Hands pressed together. Eyes closed. And beside them, Ava Brooks, the maid he'd barely spoken 10 words to, was leading his sons in prayer. And in that moment, in the stillness of that cream-carpeted room, Ethan Caldwell, tech billionaire, man who controlled markets and moved millions, felt something shatter inside his chest. For 2 years, he hadn't cried, not even when they lowered Claire into the ground. But standing in that doorway, watching his children speak to a God he'd stopped believing in, the tears came. Ethan Caldwell didn't recognize this version of his home. Not because of the decor, but because peace had never lived here. Not since the accident. He once had a wife named Claire. Brilliant, gentle, the kind of woman who made chaos feel like a symphony. She made the boys feel loved. And then, one cold October night, she was gone. After the funeral, Ethan did what he knew best. He disappeared into boardrooms. Profit margins climbed. So did the silence. He told himself the twins were resilient. That private therapists and elite nannies were enough. That grief would fade on its own. But it didn't. The twins, Liam and Lucas, grew quieter by the month. One stopped eating. One screamed through nightmares. Both asked the same question every night. Why didn't God save Mommy? And the nannies, they never lasted. Until one quiet Tuesday morning, a soft-spoken woman from a small southern town arrived with cleaning supplies, a worn Bible, and no expectation of being noticed. Her name was Ava Brooks. She was never meant to matter. She was only there to clean. But grace doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it just quietly walks in and refuses to leave. But before we continue, click subscribe, like this video, and tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. I pray this story reminds you that presence heals what money never could. Now let me take you back to the beginning and show you how Ava Brooks became the answer to a prayer Ethan never thought to whisper. It started 3 months earlier, on a Tuesday morning that felt like every other Tuesday morning in the Caldwell mansion. Empty, cold, functional. The kind of home where everything had a place except joy. Ethan's assistant had called the agency again. Another nanny had quit. The 7th one in 18 months. This time, the woman hadn't even bothered with 2 weeks' notice. She'd simply packed her bags after Liam threw a plate across the dining room and Lucas locked himself in the bathroom for 4 hours. She left a note on the counter. "I'm sorry. I can't help them." Nobody could. So the agency sent someone different. Not a nanny this time. Just a temporary cleaner. Someone to keep the house running while they searched for yet another specialist who might last longer than a month. Her name was Ava Brooks. She arrived in a worn sedan with a small duffel bag and cleaning supplies. She wore simple clothes, spoke softly, and asked for nothing except which rooms needed attention. She didn't try to introduce herself to the boys, didn't ask about their mother, didn't offer unsolicited advice about grief or healing or any of the therapeutic language Ethan had grown to hate. She just cleaned, quietly, carefully, almost invisibly, and for the first week, that's all she was, invisible. But the twins were not fine. They had not been fine since the night their mother's car was hit by a drunk driver running a red light. Since the night Ethan had to kneel beside their beds and tell them Mommy wasn't coming home. Since the funeral, where Liam screamed and Lucas went completely silent, the trauma lived in everything they did. Liam's tantrums came without warning. Plates smashed, doors slammed, Rage poured out of a 6-year-old body that didn't know how else to release the pain. Lucas chose silence. He stopped talking for weeks at a time, stopped eating, stopped sleeping. He would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, calling for a mother who would never answer. Ethan hired the best therapists money could buy. Child psychologists, grief counselors, trauma specialists. They came with degrees and methods and calming voices. But nothing worked. The boys didn't trust them, didn't open up, didn't heal. And Ethan, drowning in his own grief, buried himself in work. 16-hour days. International calls at midnight. Board meetings that stretched until dawn. He told himself he was providing for them, securing their future, honoring Claire's memory by keeping the empire she'd helped him build from collapsing. But the truth was simpler and darker. He didn't know how to be with them, didn't know how to hold their pain when he could barely hold his own. So the mansion stayed cold, and the boys stayed broken. Until the night, everything shifted. It was Ava's second week. She'd finished cleaning the kitchen and was about to leave when she heard it. A sound that pierced through the silence. Liam, crying. Not the angry kind. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and hopeless. She should have left. It wasn't her job. Wasn't her place. But something inside her refused to walk away from that sound. She found him curled up on the hallway floor outside his mother's old studio. The door had been locked since the funeral. Liam was sobbing into his knees, small body shaking. Ava didn't think. She just knelt down beside him and pulled him close. He didn't resist. He just collapsed into her, crying harder, saying words between gasps. I miss her. I miss her so much. I know, sweetheart, Ava whispered. I know you do. And then, without planning it, without asking permission, Ava did what her own grandmother had done for her when she was small and scared. She prayed, softly, gently, her hand on his back, her voice barely above a whisper. Lord, this boy is hurting. Wrap your arms around him. Let him feel loved. Let him feel safe. Bring peace to his heart. Heal what's broken inside him. The crying slowed, then stopped. Liam's breathing steadied. And for the first time in months, he fell asleep. Right there on the floor, in the arms of a woman he barely knew. The next morning, Lucas found her in the kitchen. He didn't say anything, just stood in the doorway, watching her. And then, slowly, he walked over and sat beside her. She handed him a piece of toast. He took it and ate. Something had shifted. Over the following weeks, Ava became their refuge. Not loudly, not officially, but undeniably. She taught them breathing prayers when the panic came, taught them bedtime verses that calmed the nightmares, told them stories about mustard seeds and mountains, about storms that obeyed voices, about a love that never left even when everything else did. The boys began to change, slowly, quietly. Liam's tantrums grew less frequent. Lucas started speaking again. The nightmares didn't disappear, but they softened. And one evening, for the first time since the funeral, the sound of laughter floated through the mansion. Ethan heard it from his office. He looked up from his laptop, confused. He hadn't heard that sound in so long, he almost didn't recognize it. He found them in the living room. Ava was reading to them, doing funny voices, and the boys were giggling. Actually giggling. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching. And for a moment, something warm flickered in his chest. Relief, maybe. Or gratitude. He assumed they were finally adjusting, finally maturing past the grief. He never imagined it had anything to do with the quiet woman sitting on the floor with his sons. He never imagined she'd become the glue holding his family together. But someone else noticed, someone who didn't like what she saw. Margaret Caldwell returned from 6 months in Europe with her sharp eyes, her sharper opinions, and her unwavering belief that the Caldwell name meant something beyond love. She saw Ava reading to the boys, saw them running to her when they were upset, saw the way they looked at her like she mattered, and Margaret didn't like it. One evening, as Ethan poured himself a drink, Margaret stood beside him, her voice smooth and cold. "That woman," she said, "the help, she's overstepping." Ethan frowned. "Ava? She's just cleaning." Margaret's smile was thin. "Is she? Because it looks to me like she's playing mother. And darling, help fights dirt, not destiny." Ethan said nothing, but the seed was planted. And Margaret Caldwell knew exactly how to water seeds of doubt. Margaret Caldwell didn't believe in waiting. She believed in control, in legacy, in making sure the right people influenced the right children. And Ava Brooks, with her worn Bible and soft prayers, was decidedly the wrong person. She found Ava in the laundry room on a Thursday afternoon, folding the boys' clothes with the same care she gave everything. Margaret closed the door behind her. The click echoed like a lock. "We need to talk," Margaret said, her voice smooth as ice. Ava looked up, startled. "Mrs. Caldwell, of course. Is something wrong?" "That depends on your definition of wrong." Margaret stepped closer, her heels sharp against the tile. "You've become quite comfortable here, haven't you?" Ava's hand stilled on a small blue shirt, Liam's favorite. "I'm just doing my job, ma'am." "Are you?" Margaret's smile was cold. "Because from where I stand, you've done far more than clean. You've inserted yourself into my grandsons' lives, into their grief, into their hearts. I never meant to overstep. They were hurting, and you just what? Decided to play mother?" Margaret's voice sharpened. "Let me be clear, Miss Brooks. You are not their mother. You are not family. You are help, and help does not shape the destiny of Caldwell heirs." Ava's throat tightened. "I care about them. That's all, care." Margaret laughed, bitter and sharp. "How noble. Tell me, Miss Brooks, what exactly is your background? What qualifies you to guide children of this caliber?" The words hit like stones. Ava looked down, shame flooding her chest. Margaret knew. She'd looked into Ava's past. The broken home, the absent father, the string of minimum-wage jobs, the years of barely surviving. "That's what I thought," Margaret said, watching Ava's face crumble. "You're ordinary. And ordinary doesn't belong here." She reached into her purse and pulled out a checkbook. She wrote quickly, tore the page free, and held it out. $600,000. More money than Ava had seen in her entire life. "Take it," Margaret said. "Leave quietly. Tonight. Before you do any more damage." Ava stared at the check, trembling. "Damage? They're attached to you, dependent on you. And when you inevitably leave, because people like you always do, you'll destroy them all over again." Margaret's eyes were steel. "So leave now. Spare them the pain. Take the money and disappear." Ava's vision blurred. She thought of Liam's laughter, Lucas's whispered prayers, the way they held her hand when the nightmares came. "And if I stay," she whispered. Margaret leaned in close. "Then I will make your life here unbearable. And I will make sure Ethan sees you for exactly what you are. A manipulator. A gold digger. Someone who used grief-stricken children to secure her place in wealth." The check hung in the air between them. Ava didn't take it. But she didn't refuse it either. She just stood there, drowning. That night, alone in her small room above the garage, Ava knelt beside her bed and prayed with everything she had. She prayed for wisdom, for clarity, for strength. But all she felt was shame. Margaret was right. She was ordinary, broken. What right did she have to shape the lives of boys destined for greatness? What if she was doing more harm than good? What if loving them was selfish? What if leaving was the kindest thing she could do? She prayed until her knees ached and her tears dried. And when dawn broke pale and cold through her window, Ava made her choice. She folded her apron neatly by the front door. left a short note, took nothing but her duffel bag, and walked out before the sun fully rose, before the boys woke up, before her heart could change her mind. By the time Ethan came downstairs that morning, she was already gone. The boys found the note first. Lucas read it aloud, his voice breaking on every word. Dear Liam and Lucas, you are so loved. Never forget that. Be brave. Be kind. I'll be praying for you always. Love. Ava. Liam crumpled the paper in his fist. No, 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 no. Lucas just stared at the space where Ava should have been. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Ethan tried to explain. Tried to tell them she'd probably needed to go home. That sometimes people leave. That they'd find someone else to help. But Liam wasn't listening. He shoved his breakfast plate off the table. It shattered across the marble floor. I don't want someone else. I want Ava. Lucas ran. Up the stairs, into his room, under his bed. He curled into a ball and refused to come out. When Ethan tried to pull him free, Lucas screamed. A raw, primal sound that echoed through the mansion like a wound tearing open. They cried like they hadn't cried since the funeral. They refused food, refused comfort, refused everything. And Ethan, kneeling on the floor beside Lucas's bed, reaching for a son who wouldn't take his hand, realized with crushing clarity that he had no idea how to fix this. He didn't know the prayers Ava used, didn't know the words that calmed them, didn't know how to be what they needed. He'd lost Claire, and now he was losing his sons all over again. He wandered downstairs in a daze, the sound of their crying following him like ghosts. And there, by the front door, folded with care, was Ava's apron. The one she wore every day. The one that smelled like lavender and safety. Ethan picked it up, held it in his hands, and something inside him broke wide open. She hadn't worked for him. She'd worked for their hearts. And he'd been too blind, too buried, too absent to see it. For the first time since Claire died, Ethan Caldwell dropped to his knees. Not out of exhaustion, not out of despair, out of surrender. He didn't know how to pray anymore. Didn't know if God even listened. But he tried. Please, he whispered, his voice cracking. Please help me. Help them. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix this. Show me. Please. The mansion stayed silent, but something shifted inside him. A clarity, a resolve. He stood, wiped his face, walked into his office and canceled every meeting on his calendar. His assistant protested. Ethan fired him on the spot. He packed bags, 3 of them, for himself and the boys. He went upstairs and knelt beside Lucas under the bed. Liam sat nearby, face red and swollen. Listen to me, Ethan said, his voice steady now. Strong. We're going to find her. Do you hear me? We're going to find Ava. And we're going to bring her home. Liam's eyes widened. Really? Really, Ethan said. We don't give up on people who heal us. Not ever. Lucas crawled out from under the bed and threw his arms around his father's neck. And for the first time in 2 years, Ethan held his sons and felt like a father again. They left that afternoon, together, searching for the woman who'd saved them all. The search took them through 5 states in 8 days. Ethan drove while the boys sat in the back, clutching the worn storybook Ava had read to them every night. The one with the bent cover and pages soft from use. The one that smelled like her. They followed leads that went nowhere. A woman at a diner in Georgia who remembered someone matching Ava's description. A gas station attendant in Alabama who thought he'd seen her. A church secretary in South Carolina who checked records and shook her head. Each dead end hit harder than the last. But Ethan didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because for the first time since Claire died, he was fully present with his sons. Not on a phone. Not distracted by emails. Not hiding behind work. He listened to them. Really listened. Lucas told him about the breathing prayers Ava taught him when the nightmares came. Liam explained how she'd shown them that talking to God didn't have to be fancy or perfect. It just had to be honest. And late at night, in cheap hotel rooms far from the mansion's cold silence, Ethan read to them from that storybook. His voice stumbled over the verses Ava had made sound like music. But the boys didn't care. They just curled against him and listened. And slowly, something in Ethan began to heal too. On the 7th day, they found a break. A former roommate of Ava's in North Carolina. A kind woman named Dorothy who made them tea and told them what she knew. Ava doesn't stay in one place long, Dorothy said softly. Not since her mama passed, but I know she goes to small churches, country churches, the kind where nobody asks questions and the doors stay open. She prays there. For hours sometimes. Where? Ethan asked, leaning forward. Which churches? Dorothy thought for a moment. Last I heard, she was heading toward Tennessee. There's a little town called Millbrook. White wooden church right off Route 40. She mentioned it once. Said it reminded her of home. Hope. Ethan felt it bloom in his chest. A feeling he thought he'd buried alongside his wife. Thank you, he whispered. They drove through the night. The boys fell asleep in the back seat. The storybook opened between them. Ethan gripped the steering wheel and prayed. Clumsy, desperate prayers. But prayers, nonetheless. If she's there, he whispered into the darkness. Help me make this right. They reached Millbrook just after dawn. The town was small, barely more than a main street, and scattered houses. And there, just off the highway, stood a white wooden church with a simple cross above the door. Ethan's hands shook as he parked. The boys woke, groggy and confused. Then Lucas saw the church and his eyes went wide. Is she here? Liam whispered. I don't know, Ethan said. But let's find out. They walked up the gravel path together. The church door was unlocked. Ethan pushed it open slowly, and sunlight spilled through stained glass windows, painting the wooden pews in soft colors. The air smelled like old hymns and answered prayers. And there, at the front, kneeling alone at the altar, was Ava. Her head was bowed, her hands clasped, her voice barely audible. Please, Lord, watch over them. Keep them safe. Heal their hearts. Let them know they're loved. Even if I can't be there, please let them feel your presence. Please don't let them feel abandoned again. Ethan's breath caught. She was praying for them, still praying for his sons. The boys didn't wait. They ran. Their footsteps echoed through the quiet sanctuary, and Ava's head snapped up. Her eyes went wide with shock. Liam, Lucas, they crashed into her, wrapping their arms around her, sobbing into her shoulders. Ava's face crumpled, and she pulled them close, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she choked out. I'm so sorry. I thought leaving was right. I thought. Don't leave us again, Liam cried. Please don't leave us. Never. Lucas whispered, his voice breaking. Promise. Never. Ava held them tighter, shaking with sobs. I promise. I promise. Ethan walked slowly down the aisle, his vision blurred. When he reached them, he did something he'd never imagined himself doing. He knelt, right there on the worn wooden floor beside his sons and the woman who'd saved them. Ava looked up at him, stunned, tears still wet on her face. Mr. Caldwell. Ethan, he said softly. Please. Just Ethan. She stared at him, confused, overwhelmed. You brought life back into my sons, Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. And into me. I was so lost. Ava. So buried in grief and work that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. You didn't just help them. You saved us. You're not just anything, Ethan interrupted. You're the answer to prayers I didn't know how to pray. And I'm begging you, Ava. Please come home. Our family isn't whole without you. Ava's hands covered her mouth. Fresh tears spilled over. I don't belong in that world. Your mother was right. I'm nobody. You're everything, Liam said fiercely. You're ours, Lucas added, gripping her hand. Ethan reached out and gently took her other hand. My mother was wrong, and I was wrong for not seeing it sooner. you belong with us. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are. Please, Ava, come home. The church was silent, except for the sound of 4 people breathing, crying, healing, and finally, Ava nodded. Okay, yes, I'll come home. The boys cheered through their tears. Ethan closed his eyes and whispered a prayer of gratitude. They drove back together, not as employer and employee, but as something far more sacred: family. When they returned to the mansion, Ethan called his mother. The conversation was short and firm. Ava stays, he said, and if you can't respect her, then you're not welcome here. Margaret tried to argue. Ethan hung up. He set new boundaries, new priorities. Work became secondary. His sons became first. And Ava, with her quiet prayers and gentle presence, became the heartbeat of their home. The mansion wasn't cold anymore. Laughter returned. The boys healed. Ethan healed. And every night before bed, the 4 of them knelt together in the twins' room, just like the moment that had changed everything. Ava would pray, soft and sure, and Ethan, no longer afraid to believe, would pray too. Thank you, he'd whisper, for bringing her to us, for saving us when we couldn't save ourselves. And in that home, where silence had once swallowed hope, peace finally came to stay. Not because of money, not because of status, but because love, the kind that kneels and prays and refuses to give up, had walked in quietly and changed everything.